Stop the demeaning of Google employees.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bill Namen's Bogus Hangout. And I have everybody introduce themselves. Let's start with you, Terry.
Terry Van Horn. I'm in Toronto, and occasionally I do some work. Occasionally.
Doc?
Doc Sheldon. I'm in Mexico, and I occasionally find a way to avoid some work.
And what is this Deep SEO Con?
Deep SEO Con is a conference that Steve Gerinkser and I are putting on in September 7th and 8th. You can check it out at deepseoconference.com. Early bird pricing has expired, but tickets are still very, very reasonable.
And there's no driving involved. It's all virtual?
It's all virtual. That's correct. Yeah, that was our bow to the pandemic. We decided that folks were going to be a little nervous about gatherings. So this year we're going to go virtual.
And next year we're going to go fish. Next year we're going to go fishing.
And next year we're going to go physical so that we can add a fishing trip on the end of it. And if I may, I want a tip of the hat to Gary Boggs and Jim Boykin, whose organizations are sponsoring Deep SEO Con.
SEO Ninjas?
Yeah, the Internet Marketing Ninjas on Jim Boykin's part. And, oh my God, I'm embarrassed. I forget the...
Behind Jim Boggs.
Chris's company name just escapes me. And I have too many tabs open.
There'll be lots of time to promote them in the future, Doc.
Yeah. And Thomas, please introduce yourself.
Thomas Sickle, founder of Blueprint Marketing, currently in Nantucket. And yep.
And I'm Bill Slosky of SEO by the Sea, and I'm the director of SEO research for Go Fish Digital. And we do have some sad news. I'll leave that to Webmaster T to share with us.
Yeah, yesterday we learned that Bob Gladstein, known as QWERTY on a number of forums, he passed away. I just wanted to say that I've known Bob for over 15 years. I met him on the I Help You forum, and eventually we became really good friends, and I kind of mentored him a bit. Well, for about a year, and then it was like we were about on an even par that quick, because he was a really good web developer. He helped me build SEO Pros and develop the review system. And after that, he did most of the reviews. He was a heck of a guy. It's hard for me to talk about him right now that much, other than to say he's a very unique person.
I had met Bob at one of the conferences that Jill Wellen had up in the New England. Kim Crossberg and I both attended.
Yeah. He was pretty close with Jill in the high rankings forum there. He went on from I Help You to go with Jill, as did most of the other people, probably everyone but me, only because I had other things to do. And, he just had a very, I don't know how to explain it exactly, but he was always lots of fun, a gas to work with. And, the number one thing is when you're reviewing other SEOs, it's pretty easy to start throwing around words like spam and stuff like that. And Bob always gave everybody the benefit of the doubt.
He was always very helpful.
Yeah. But that's hard to do when you look at the crap that we were looking at the time. I mean, it was pretty hard to keep it in perspective, but he just assumed everybody just didn't know any better.
I remember the first time I came across an SEO forum. and people were arguing over the perfect percentage of keyword density for a specific niche. I ran away as quickly as I could and stayed away from that forum for a long time.
Yeah. That might have been I help you.
I don't know.
Some of the topics over there, we weren't exactly in charge of things. That was other people.
I know it's the pointy white hats and the
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry for your losses. I knew Bob through like Twitter, but I never met him.
He was a nice guy. We gathered at dinner one night after Joe's conference.
And my introduction to Bob was through Terry over at SEO Pros. And then I started following some of his comments on the forum, and he was always very helpful. Never judgmental.
For sure. Yeah, he's still running some tests that are over 10 years old on titles. Proving that 85 characters is actually the weighted number, not 65. Him and I actually discussed that before he decided to do those tests. Thought it was pretty unique because Google was actually telling you that your theory was correct by using the syntax for all-in title. Showed that it was around 80 characters. 80 to 85, depending on where it truncated. And it always truncates on a space.
Does it matter the type of letter, or it's not by pixels, it's by characters?
Pixels. Okay, this has bothered me for a long time. You know how hard it is to compute pixels
Impossible.
on a computer?
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense, right?
What idiot thought of that? I don't know, but that so many people actually believe it is even more astonishing. Plus, programmers work in characters. Graphic artists work in pixels.
Yeah.
I'll say no more.
Yeah, I've never heard of anything actually measured in pixels.
Well, plus the fact I've got 3 monitors in front of me. Which monitor should I be looking at to determine the pixel count?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Density and
every browser is different. The size of a pixel on every browser is different. And machine too, I believe. I'm not positive about that one, but I know for a browser it's definitely true.
most computers, have different, like, I know I'm on a.
So that's why it's stupid to think that that's how they figure it out.
Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense.
What makes more sense, pixel-wise, is how much space there is when they put the ads in. That's how that really happens.
I get people who are sponsoring SEO forums ask me for high-resolution images. And I send them a response back saying, I work on the web. I don't have any.
Yeah. But why do you need high-resolution images? You can only do 72 dpi regardless.
Because they send a reply back saying, I need to print documents.
Right. That makes more sense.
And I say, okay, I don't have any 300 dpi images. I'm sorry. I work on the web.
Oh, see, I keep all my PN. Well, in my case, it'd be a PND.
Or AI file. Yeah.
So I remember people like Jacob Nielsen always had pages on their website with images that were print profiles.
Well,
see, you could do that now with the way CSS. I was reading about that. You can actually. There's a command for print.
X2. Oh, yeah, for print. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't believe how much I'm learning in this new work about web development stuff that I haven't looked at in probably 15, 20 years.
Mhm. So we're learning a bunch of new stuff. You just sent me a news for the day, and it says Google core updates can impact people also ask results.
What? Who knocked
Well,
me over with a feather?
core updates say target it to only work on certain results.
So I had a client who was spamming alt images for entities, and they were naming them twice, and they got cut out of top stories because of that.
Oh yeah.
And we got them to change how they were naming the entities, so they only named them once, and they got returned to top stories. So Google will get you if you do stuff like that.
Core updates,
Especially in something like top stories. If you, that's the last place you want to spam.
Yeah.
I have a client that turned off WP Rocket, and I was just like, what, looked at it and finally turned it back on today. But
One of the SEO plugins was conflicting with that.
Yeah, they were having an issue with there was something with the host, and we got that straightened out. But they basically in their they were about almost 80% all green, and now it's back to like 20% all green. So really impacts the traffic quite a bit. It's the first FCP and all the other two. But I haven't had any real big issues with the way it structured itself after I forgot what that is called, the CLS.
And I thought this was old news. I mean, Google forum links do not work for SEO.
that was about 20 years old, I think, Bill.
Man, that's my whole link building process.
If you worked in an SEO forum, you knew to tell people not to spam. It didn't do any good.
Yep.
I remember people put up,
back in the 90s.
Flood them with I still see it every once in a while, but I don't know what they're thinking. Like, I mean, no followed links.
Well, you're assuming that they're thinking, Thomas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would be a mistake.
Assuming anything is a mistake. Where SEOs are concerned, doesn't matter how stupid it is, you can find someone doing it somewhere.
Yeah,
Repeatedly.
I wrote an article the other day on inverted indexes because I don't think most SEOs these days know about inverted indexes.
It's a good article.
Thanks. So it made sense. I remember when Matt Cutts wrote a newsletter for librarians where he explained how inverted indexes worked. And it was something that I think a lot of SEOs back then learned about Google's index system because of it. But we hadn't had people writing about stuff like that.
Still don't.
Yeah, no, I hadn't come across something about inverted indexes in years.
There was a really good thing on query processing a couple of weeks ago on the podcast from Google, from John and Gary and Martin. And they did talk about posting lists and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, it's really helpful to have something like this have it updated, especially the way that you've tied the patent into it. It's really easy to read and understand. Fantastic post.
Thanks.
Still wrapping my head around the author's article, so that's next.
I'll have
The author's article that
Oh, yeah.
Bill did last week, I think it was. or the week before.
It said Google's keeping an eye on how people copy content across the web too.
Right.
That's-
What I was really interested was in original content and how they could kind of look at everything after that as duplicate.
That
Or not duplicate is a bad word in SEO. It'd be better to say is a copy of the original. So it's not as valuable as the piece from the original guy.
They can tell its origination date or the date they first crawled it, and then compare that date to the dates of other pieces that cover the same thing.
Right.
And see which one is the first.
Right. And it's also, if you're looking at content, right, you don't want a whole bunch of pages on the exact same topic where they're all saying that's the exact same thing, which you see a lot in SEO. I mean, if you went to Search Engine Journal and started searching on certain keywords there, you'd see the same articles being written about 10 times.
Yeah.
Right? If you look at that and say, okay, this is how I've been thinking about this a lot, maybe too much. I don't know. But to me, it makes a lot of sense to look at that and say, okay, this is the original. All these other people, did they add any value to that original thing and work it that way? And to me, that makes a lot of sense in how you look at a page. Is how unique is this page, which the uniqueness of it makes it more valuable to the user. What do you think of that as a kind of?
So I remember an article called 10 Tips on Writing the Living Web from 2002, where he said, okay, when you blog about something, add value. Describe something new, something unique, something personal. That makes what you're writing worth people reading.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if it's like you can add value by just finding more resources than the first article, right?
Right. So we followed number 5 from that, which was make good frenemies. I found somebody else who blogs about local search. There's an article by Mike Blumenthal, and I wrote about his article and why I didn't agree with it. And he commented in the comments, and then he wrote an article in response. And I commented in the comments there. And we argued over it. We got a bunch of traffic because of it. It's a fun thing to talk about.
Yeah. So
well, that's how you basically add value. That's the easiest way to add value is, expound or do something more with the original topic, find better examples, whatever. But you have to make your article better in order, add more value than the other.
You also get to use their base of people are looking at it and your base of people, so you get a lot of eyeballs on it.
If you add a good counter argument to something you're arguing and explain it well, and then explain why it doesn't really apply, you're showing people a rational thought approach behind it, which is always good to see.
Right. Another view of the same thing, which is how people learn and grow their knowledge of something.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's interesting about authorship vectors and how authors are becoming more and more tied in with their content. I think that's a really important thing for people to learn and to mark up their authorship. Not like old school authorship, but just to make sure that they have their authorship on the page.
When I took English classes and we talked about styles behind different authors. So I had one that was on Renaissance authors, and we talked about the way people wrote, like Thomas Carlyle would write very long sentences, and he used parallelism with multi-staged things very effectively. But he never wrote sentences that were shorter than 17 words. I looked for him and counted.
Sounds like a good internet writer.
Not an anal bone in your body, Bill.
Well, it's like you're reading people like Ernest Hemingway, who writes these really short sentences with short words. And he's known for, it's referred to as the iceberg approach, where you just see the tip of the iceberg
Right.
of the story. And then you're reading William Faulkner right after him, who uses these really long sentences. And they're referred to as stream of consciousness sentences, because he writes and writes and writes like his diary of the mind.
Right. Like someone thinking those things rather than saying them.
Yeah. And they're very different ways to tell stories, and they're both effective.
Mm-hmm.
But it's good seeing the contrast in styles.
You think Google is picking up on that, obviously, with the author vectoring and being able to tie an author to their actual ability, their writing style in some cases?
It makes sense when you do that.
Yeah.
It makes sense if they get that. I would question whether their algorithms are really there yet, though.
Passages are actually tailor-made for that sort of thing, right, Bill?
Yep.
Well, I remember when we had guys who were selling spinning articles where they spat out gibberish. They take the words something's written in and add synonyms and subtract synonyms and make it lose all semblance of sense. And some of those articles are still in use today. You spend some time on the web, you'll see them. It's strange when you find an article that you wrote that's been transformed.
Yeah, I think there's not spinning, but I think there's a lot of, as far as articles on the internet, a lot where someone reads someone else's stuff and just says it slightly different, the exact same thing. How much use is that actually? Right? That's where I think it comes in handy for Google, especially the way they fragment the content into forward groupings, right?
Fragment is in segmentation?
I may not have used the exact word you would, Bill, but yeah, that's what I mean.
So I have written about natural language declarations and natural language processing, where they talk about fragmenting those statements, because sometimes fragments contain answers. And when they're doing passage indexing, they're looking for the answers.
Okay. But they also discuss that in the author's patent that you were talking about, was how they fragmented the page into sections and whatnot, decided what was unique and what was already being said in a different way. And personally, all the flux that people have been talking about in the results could be put on this.
It's interesting seeing these language models used.
Yeah.
And I pick on the old LSI. It is a language model. It's an old one from before the web, with older databases that don't change much. And that's the problem with
well static databases that you could almost compile.
Yeah, I mean, it's like back when I was working with electronic databases in law. We were finding natural resource damages, sources, things in places like LexisNexis that you couldn't really find in the web yet.
LexisNexis looks like it's been built before the web. When you go into it today, it's quite a bit of stuff.
There are shepherd's guides in law libraries where they have books by companies. Key Publishing is one of the companies, and they have a bunch of keywords, the keyword sections where you can find keywords for articles. And it's a different way of approaching findability on the web. But the idea is if you're doing research for a legal case and you're talking about a certain statute, you want to look that statute up and see how it's been litigated before.
Set precedent and that type of thing.
Whether or not it's been overruled or changed somehow, or if it was decided upon in a way that fits the facts of your case more.
Yeah.
So there have been so many cases, you want to find something that fits with the application that you see.
Yeah, I imagine that's a problem for a lot of attorneys trying to get something that's exactly what they're looking for or applies.
Because sometimes there are really minor changes that absolutely make a difference. And then there are legal cases that define things like unconscionable.
Yeah.
And unconscionable means the small print on the back of contracts that cause people to overturn their own rights.
Yeah.
And, these days that applies to things like emails.
I actually had a lease a while back, and the people had a rule that the lawyer that I had said it's unconscionable, and basically they had a thing that if the person heard the sound outside the walls more than twice, I had to pay the 2 years in advance or something like that, or 2 years and then leave. But that was the wording in the lease document. I didn't take the lease, but that was the exact reply the lawyer gave me was this is unconscionable.
Yeah, the person, whoever did the last lease that I signed to rent a place, did a good job. It was really long though.
Lots of big words, but unenforceable, huh?
No, it covered most of what it talked about.
This one, it had about 50 different clauses where you could have to pay them 2 years and then leave. And so it was just a nightmare thing, and we decided to pass on it.
The landlord before that had another lease, and she was going over it with us, and we had a pen out next to the lease so that we could modify it and she could modify it. Because there's stuff in there that she didn't even realize was in there.
Yeah. When we brought it up to the place, they blamed it on some attorney that worked for the couple that was renting it, and then it turns out that it was their attorney that wrote it. But
so one of the funny things you learn about lawyers when you go to law school is most of the times they come out with the contract, they copy the contract from a contract book.
yeah,
So they don't actually write the contract. It's someone else wrote the contract. They're just flying it.
And
they
they didn't
know
even do it.
Works.
They had one of their interns do it. So they may end up importing a clause that really destroys another part of the contract.
Yeah, it makes sense. If they have a boilerplate contract and it works, it's enforceable for a lot of things that they would.
Those things don't get changed too often.
Yeah.
So I took a class on Admiralty Law, which is a law governing ships, and it covered things like the Jones Act, which was passed in the 1850s, and it covers damages to sailors on ships. And it hasn't really changed much since the 1850s, so they haven't had any reason to amend and update the language of the laws. People get hurt the same way on ships now that they did back then in the 1850s. Like they fall over and fall into the water and drown.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
people haven't stopped drowning.
No, unfortunately. International waters is still about the same distance, though, right?
It's like you go out 10 miles and you're no longer on the continental area covering wherever you lived.
Yeah.
You're in international waters.
And a lot of people don't understand the nearly absolute power of the captain of a vessel in international waters.
Yeah.
I mean, they're basically there are only a few international laws that even apply that contravene the old, the old school open sea laws. The captain has almost absolute power.
Most international laws get passed by treaty too.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever you're from, if your place of your jurisdiction has agreed to the treaty, and your Senate or legislature has passed it, it's more likely something applies to you. It's like I wrote my paper for law school on Antarctica and the different ways that Antarctica was recognized as property. And there's at least 6 different ways it was recognized as property. And there was a treaty that preserved Antarctica as an environmentally safe place to be. They weren't allowed to drill there. It was a protected area. And most of the times, most cases, it still is. But let's get back to SEO. So Google posts for knowledge panels being disabled on July 20th. Which knowledge panels are these?
The ones to the right.
There's some knowledge panels that are like Google My Business knowledge panels.
Oh yeah.
And those still have posts, and those posts are still active.
That's a Google My Business post, though, right? It's a little bit.
It's never specifically named anything different by Google. It's like ignorance through obfuscation. If we don't say anything, we don't mean anything. It doesn't apply to us.
I love that.
We tell you it's one type of knowledge panel. It's not the other type of knowledge panel. If we're too specific, it may apply to us.
So the beta has gone away, as with most Google things, on this one.
So I remember when posts appeared in knowledge panels.
Yep.
Right.
They turned them over to politicians. So it was like 2015. It said, "Hey Donald, want to try this post thing?" And he did. And then they turned that over to other business types.
Yeah, I think in 14, artists and authors had them in 2014. I think that's what it said in the article that I have linked there. But now, basically, they're taking them from everybody. No posts at all in the knowledge panel.
But if you're doing local and you're doing Google My Business, you should still create posts, or no?
On your business listing, but you won't see it in the knowledge panel. I don't
That's
think
interesting.
so.
But
Interesting.
in knowledge panel has things for Google My Business that are tied to products, tied to appointments.
Those kind of things, that's what I mean, why they didn't really talk about the business stuff, just that authors and people like that, those kind of posts were being removed, and that people had until a certain date to go and get anything that they wanted.
So that had buttons for events too. So if you were a landscaping place,
Right.
and you were having a dog show, you would have a button for the dog show at your landscaping place.
Right.
And those are getting clicked on a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think
business listings aren't too bad. But for the amount of views that you get, the click-through rates, not exactly something you're writing home to mom about.
Great
So
in
you-
terms of percentage, but not much in the way of volume. Yeah.
you think it'll
Right.
be
So
safe.
so I remember when Schema for Events came out, and Kim Crossberg complained about a website that she was using that had horse races yearly. And I said, okay, if you use the event markup, it'll show in the search results. And she said, well, that's not good. We want them to see the web page. I said, do you really care whether they learn about the event on search results or on the web page, as long as they show up at the horse race?
Yeah.
And she
And
said,
pay for the ticket.
she said, no, I don't really care. I said, it's right. And that's what somebody at Google was thinking. We just want to let people know about the events.
And most people wouldn't want to go to the website unless they wanted more details anyhow.
It can be hard to find stuff on websites sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Unfortunately, navigation and stuff like that are, not as important as having the right title.
I mean, it takes 2 minutes to create a banner that says, come to our horse race. Do people spend the 2 minutes? No.
And it's easy in the post to entice them to the site. Just say, come to the site for a promo code.
Yeah.
10% off the ticket price if you want them at the site too. I mean, Google's basically giving you a bill frickin' board in the search results. If you're not taking advantage of that, I'd be firing the guy who's working for you.
I mean, this is one of those instances where people are complaining about Google adding featured snippets and less things to click on in search results. But where you put things like event markup in a search result, you're begging them not to click on anything because you want them to come to your event. You don't care if they click on the website.
Right. Or you can entice, like you're saying, entice them in to come click on the event from what they've learned, what Google shows them in the SERPs.
The dollars are the same, whether they buy it on the site or on
exactly.
Google. You take the same amount to the bank, and that's what's important.
Oh, I agree.
In client site back stuff, I'd always say one thing. Have you ever seen a sale from Google?
Mm-hmm.
Google doesn't buy anything. They help people get here to buy something, but Google doesn't buy anything. So you have the wrong audience if you think Google is your audience.
I've never thought of anyone thinking that.
Hey, there are people, well-known people who think that. You write for search engines, not for people.
Oh, yeah, no, I've definitely heard that said. It's just the way you put it was very funny. It makes sense.
Well, it's
when you
easy
think
to
of your
make
audience.
fun of stupid people. I mean,
Google is your audience. Yeah.
easy targets.
So, there's somebody I was talking to in the forum, I think on Twitter actually, that seems to believe that they lost 80% of their traffic due to site speed. Does anyone think that's possible?
Well, if they've got a 30-second page load, I could see them taking a really hefty hit on traffic. But I mean, how are they determining traffic?
Analytics.
Yeah, but I mean, is it just a click from the SERP?
Oh,
you
sorry.
can call that traffic, but if they stay and bounce in 500 milliseconds, I don't count it as traffic.
I've worked on a range of websites of different types, and some of those were painter websites. And some painters are more talented than others. Some you want to see the pictures, some you don't really care.
Yep.
Problem with pictures and downloading pictures on a website is they can be slow.
Yeah.
Is it worth waiting? For some
And
paintings, it's not necessarily worth waiting.
And image
These days,
optimization that's one of the areas that I think the most sites really neglect to put the adequate attention to, is optimizing their images in terms of page load, in terms of where are they loading, where are they triggering to, are they deferring, are they trying to upload a 1200?
Sets?
If they're
Are they
trying to,
using sets where you could put all 4 different kinds in? People don't realize WordPress does that for you now. All you have to do is have the module on your PHP, and they'll make all of them for you. I was starting to write source sets for all the pictures that would go in, and then I noticed, how the hell am I getting them already? I haven't even written the code. And then I remember I got a complaint in the Web Vitals test that I wasn't allowed, didn't have the proper module for WordPress to do that. I got my brother to load that, and sure enough, every time I put an image now, they have 4. It automatically makes 4 properly sized images from my optimized image.
Yeah.
Supposedly there's a way to load a lower quality image in front of the higher quality image while it's loading. And then basically if you lazy load it, you can imagine the higher quality image, if it's a real big image, you're running like a 3 meg.
It's not quality. It's the size of the image. So a lot of before, when you put a big 800 image in WordPress, they said it was responsive because it made the image smaller and mobile, but it just took the same image and resized it. Now it actually replaces the picture,
with the
which
smaller
means instead of downloading that 800, you're actually downloading a picture half the size.
Yeah, no, that's big on mobile.
And that makes a big difference in the time of download for sure.
And the way people perceive, the entire site running.
Yeah, a lot of people don't realize that yet, that was another of the things that was just recently added to WordPress.
Yeah, I like a lot of the improvements they've done to WordPress have been pretty outstanding.
But you have to have the right module installed in your PHP.
You put it in your functions file?
No, it's a module you include in your PHP.
Okay, that's cool.
I'm seeing my brother tomorrow. He has those details. I'm like Christine Applegate, one goes in, one has to leave. I can't, I don't accumulate, only have so much space.
Have you guys seen the Shopify updates? Shopify is finally taking speed seriously. They announced hydrogen, oxygen, and Shopify 2.0 templates, which can be made of JSON or liquid. And according to them, they're 35% faster. And then hydrogen and oxygen, I forgot which one is. One of them is the host. Hydrogen, I think, is the host. No, oxygen. I'm sorry. And hydrogen is the framework. That's coming out on October 5th. But as of the 15th, as of 5 days ago, we can now download or buy Shopify 2.0 stores, which are 35% faster.
Had not seen that.
If you're stuck with
follow Shopify.
Yeah, if you're stuck with Shopify,
why would I want to even bother? Why would I care?
Well, if you're out there and you're stuck with Shopify, take a look. It's 35% faster than the old stuff.
So that could still mean it's slow as shit. It's just faster than.
I was gonna say,
Yeah, absolutely.
there's a fine line between 35% faster and 35% less slow.
Yeah, it's very true. I think Shopify just getting so bloated because like it just has apps instead of plugins like WordPress and all running code on every single page. There's no real. It wasn't as advanced as WordPress in terms of being able to remove extra CSS or JavaScript and stuff like that. So now you can, with Shopify 2.0, they're finally catching up to.
Oh, you mean you could put it where it actually belongs?
Yeah, it's kind of a miracle.
I don't understand that. Hey, we're letting you put it where it belongs. What's so great about that? It shouldn't have been there in the first place. Same with a lot of WordPress. I don't understand why they put all that crap in the head.
Yeah.
I'm having a hell of a time trying to figure out where it actually gets added. Like, I don't want a link to my feed for the comments and all that stuff. That's just what spammers do in their time.
/feed for every URL.
Yeah, when they got nothing better to do, they go to Google and search for new places to spam.
Absolutely, yeah.
And if you're worried about people stealing your content, well, if your feed is right in the HTML, all they have to do is grab your feed and they can publish everything just as fast as you do.
Yeah. No, pretty much, yeah. As soon as you hit the button, it's going to be on there.
I mean, this is how little people actually understand about how things work.
Yeah. I agree. I think that, I'm trying to think of the last time I actually had to use Copyscape to put a DMCA against somebody. But it's been a little while, but I had a guy when I first created my website, cloned it page for page, everything identical. And he put some acronym instead of my company name. And that was fun, but didn't last very long. And,
well, it's just an XML file, eh?
Yeah, it's easy to.
So you can pull it in, and then I could, with just a few lines of programming, change all the links and the titles, and it would be hard for you to actually figure out that I've done that.
It's amazing. It's amazing how quickly something like that can change if you have letterhead from an attorney on the letter you sent in.
That tends to get their attention pretty quickly.
That is true.
But first you have to know that they're doing it.
So we found your website. It's a duplicate of our website, except you've typo squatted on the name. You changed the name. Everything else is the same. Please stop. We expect to see this gone within 24 hours.
Yep.
I don't even bother with them. If they're hosting it, I don't even bother sending them a letter. But if they're on a host, I write the host. I don't even write them.
I sent a letter to a host saying they're violating your terms of service.
I tell the host if they don't remove it, I'm going to sue them.
Right.
I'm going to sue them, not the people that they're hosting for. I'll sue you. You're easier to.
The host contacts them and tells them to change it.
That's right. Or they're off the server.
Yeah, if they don't do it.
Because under the DMCA, the host is going to be liable.
140
under
grand.
The law.
Yep.
The host is liable.
So
not just the DMCA. The law. Copyright law.
Hosts have terms of service. They apply to the people they host.
Yep.
That's why the host, if you look at a contract, always has the right to tell you to remove anything they find that they don't want there. If you don't like it, you can leave and don't let the door hit you in the backside on the way out.
The problem, though, was that that before the DMCA was passed and became law, you had hosts that were willing to, for that $49 a month, they didn't give a shit what their clients did.
You send an email to the host saying, here's your URL for your terms of service, which says you won't allow people on your site to infringe other people's copyrights. Your hosted person is infringing my copyright. Tell them to stop. Tell them to stop today.
And now they better do it or they're going to be liable themselves. Yeah.
They always have been.
I've never had a problem.
The problem is when the guy who's the people that have stolen the content also own the server. You're screwed. They can ignore you all they want. Then you have to take real legal action.
They can be held just as liable as GoDaddy or Bluehost.
Right.
If
they're in a country that plays ball, if they're in Luxembourg or someplace like that where they sell hosting that's specifically for that, that's the worst. But
they're not selling hosting. I came across a guy who had his own servers, just like me. He could do whatever he wanted.
But like some countries,
I had to sue him to get him to remove it.
Yeah.
DMCA, he basically laughed at me.
No. Well, yeah, he would. But the DMCA is law. The DMCA is what was passed and became the law. And now any host, whether it's a cell phone server or not, any host can be held liable for copyright infringement of a site that's hosted on that server. So,
it doesn't have the same mean aspect to it. I'm going to obliterate your company cause your host to die. Doesn't sound as bad as I'm going to send a DMCA notice at you.
Yeah, that's more of the friendly way to do it.
Yeah, I've been lucky. I have had to submit DMCA requests 4 or 5 times. I've never had a host not take swift and decisive action to get the stuff down. I've had one of them. In fact, one of them actually included me on a response letter. I sent them the notice. They took the site down, okay? Because they never bothered to reach out to the site owner and say, hey, we've been notified of this. You have 10 days or 10 minutes or whatever to respond. They just took the site down.
People like blaming interns. Our intern put that up.
Oh, yeah,
sorry.
Yeah. Well, my intern's going to call my lawyer and sue your ass.
Yeah, one of the places I got contacted, they took it down and basically told the guy when he told them what content was stolen on the site, not just mine, but all of it, he had to prove what he'd actually done himself.
Wow.
But they took him down immediately and said, you now have to prove that you actually did this stuff.
I always send it to Google as well, just so that's on there in case they get a few DMCAs through Google. It seems to crush their rankings after.
I have included fictitious name at google.com on letters, emails, just to bluff somebody and make them think that the spam team, more than once, Matt at google.com was, or Matt C, I think I used at google.com was a CC on the email.
Oh, that's good.
I've sent Freedom of Information Act requests to government agencies and CC'd prominent newspapers in the area. And that helps.
Yeah, that works well.
G. Johnson at FBI.com.
Yeah,
Some names are better spam names than others. It's like I remember William Johnson had 57 State Bureau of Identification numbers.
Wow.
So you copy William Johnson on letters.
You're going to get a real guy.
They have no idea who you're talking
Make
about.
them wonder, eh?
It's like Michael Jackson used to be the king of pop. There also was a Michael Jackson who was the head of Homeland Security. They're not the same guy, right?
At Neverland Ranch, or no? I'm just kidding. Just kidding.
It's in DC, right?
What's going on with that place, if you don't mind me asking? What are they doing with it?
Neverland Ranch?
Yeah.
Don't know. So I used to live in DC area. I used to get the Washington Post. I used to read through it. And I'm remembering one article I read where they showed a picture of an empty parking lot and said the CIA is interested in buying this property to turn it into a international headquarters. Then they retracted that story a week later, saying the CIA was going to buy this property, but the FBI already beat them to it.
Wow.
You know, one of those places where in the middle of it, there's a elevator, little tiny booth. You go into the booth, you get into the elevator and go down one floor, and there's like a huge metropolis underneath the parking lot.
Those big bunker office buildings.
Yeah.
Wow.
So hundreds of desks and places for underlings to work.
Yeah. Like I've seen one in Hawaii. I haven't actually been inside of it, but where it's supposed to be a huge complex.
I lived in.
Bill,
Yeah.
did you look at the seek to action schema post I included in the news?
Seek to action is schema where you're telling people there are important moments on videos at
Yeah,
a specific time,
yeah,
and the schema will show in search results that there's an important moment in a video that they could
yeah.
watch.
And then they send a bot out or something, and they verify your time. And then I have a feeling that we're going to start seeing these timelines, not these important moments, not just in the search results on Google,
Yeah.
but they'll also be included with the video on YouTube.
I looked
Yeah.
up important moments in the USPTO, and there's only one result, and it wasn't the same thing. But then somebody showed me a Google support page which talked about these moments and provided much more detail. So there
Yeah,
is
I
a
was
Google,
looking at that.
Google
this
support
afternoon.
page on it. Yeah.
Yeah, just before we came on, I was starting to go through that. It's actually part of a larger video object for schema,
Yeah, it's pretty
which
interesting.
video is one of the next ones I'm going to be adding to my tool.
Yeah, schema is one of the fastest growing areas of SEO.
Oh,
'Cause
yeah.
It has lots of stuff going on. And they're coming out with updates on a regular basis. It's like quarterly, they have a new update. They just came out with 13.
Yeah, no, it's and to see
There's
what
been a
Google
lot of
actually
activity.
implements.
There's been a lot of activity, a lot of discussion activity in the working group. They're working on some cool stuff, constant.
I agree.
I
I think
love
schema is
social
going to
media.
become a bigger and bigger part of SEO as things go forward, mainly because it's machine readable. So that makes it really
Well,
useful.
that's to put that in perspective, that's like XML sitemaps. People say, well, what's so important about an XML sitemap? With the regular sitemap, an HTML sitemap, a crawler has to come visit link by link through a whole site. With an XML sitemap, a crawler just downloads the XML sitemap and then adds the URLs to a schedule of places to visit. It can
Yeah.
verify that they exist and doesn't have to verify that it's right. It
Well,
just
also,
down.
if it
It
has
just
the last mod, they can decide that they don't need to crawl it.
so if a search engine can come just grab a script from your website or a text file, it doesn't need to download your pages.
Yeah.
It just
Well, for me, it's important, I think, because it's going to change the viewing habits of people. If that's included on the embed, definitely it will be included on an embed in the results. But also, you should be able to add that to your. You can easily add that to your programming on your site to have those pieces built into it, so people don't maybe have to listen to the whole thing to get the good stuff out of it. So I found that after about 10 minutes, most people have had it with a video. So if you can make that 10 minutes, 3 different spots in the video, it's going to be more effective. And what people don't understand really is that ranking on YouTube is not any longer done by percentage viewed. It's total minutes viewed of that video and total minutes viewed of your channel that are the 2 important metrics.
Makes sense.
It used to be percentages of how much of the video was watched.
Yeah.
But that went out the window when people started doing hangouts and longer videos. Like Dave used to pull pieces out of the videos and republish them for that reason. I always told him I wouldn't bother with that. I don't see the advantage in that.
Google's changed the way they're indexing videos too. It used to be if you had a long movie that had a car chase in it, if the text for the video didn't say that you had a car chase scene in it, but Google watched the video and recognized car chase, Google indexed it. And someone could search for car chases and come up with that result.
Yeah.
Yeah, even without tags.
Well, also, whether you add a caption to a video or not, internally, I'm pretty sure Google does it for you automatically, so that people with who are impaired, right, can go and see any video, and it's not whether the creator has added the caption. Google does it automatically.
So when people ask questions like who's Barack Obama married to? Michelle Obama. So someone at Google is marking up on a web page where Michelle Obama is mentioned that she's married to Barack Obama. It's tagging it automatically.
Yeah, it's just answering it just by default, or auto answer.
So there's a lot of internal tagging going on. So you can have internal tagging in programs like BERT.
That would be a tag attached to like a chunk of 4, correct?
Tag attached to a chunk of 4.
4 words. Doesn't BERT work in 4s? 4 forward, 4 backwards.
It's part of BERT. That's a masking part you're thinking of.
Oh,
There's a language placement part that is part of the language model, the training aspect, where it identifies whether words are verbs, adverbs, nouns.
Okay.
And
then it adds tags to those chunks that kind of identify what's valuable about it.
Right. If we come across a noun, it might say this noun is this entity.
Okay, this noun is this person, basically.
Yeah. So
Okay.
you're saying Terminator. Oh, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Okay. That's interesting. I'd never heard it referred to as like tagging, but that makes sense.
Yeah. So Google's breaking language down into natural language declarations and tuples, usually in threes, triples, but they can be bigger.
Tuples.
Bigger.
I was thinking of 4, but it's actually 3.
A tuple can be any number of parts, like n-grams. You can have 4 grams, 3 grams, 2 grams. So a tuple can be 3 parts, 4 parts, 5 parts, and so on. So usually a tuple in natural language is 3 parts: subject, verb, object. But it can be longer than that.
See, that's something that we can have a video on.
Yeah.
Actually explain it that way, because I don't know how many times we've had this discussion, but that's the best way I've heard describe that particular thing and what's going on.
I agree, especially with the n-gram analogy is a good one.
So n-grams were used commonly. They're maybe not so much now, but it's when you're doing a language model, you take a page of content, you break it down into parts, and it's like 3 words. So every group of 3 words is its own individual part, and then you do statistics on those parts, and that tells you how good or how bad the language is compared to language on other sites.
Yep.
So you may say, okay, the IRS is a better website than most other websites, so I'm going to compare the statistics from the n-grams from that site to other sites, and that'll give me a quality score for websites based on how good or how bad the statistics are for the n-grams.
Yeah.
And they're judging pages based on gibberish, based on punctuation, based on how long sentences are, how short they are, how complicated the words are in them. They're doing a lot of that.
They're also classifying, aren't they, by using n-grams?
They can look at the types of words you're using, and they can use something like the Berkeley framework to get a sense of what language you're using, what frame set. If you work at a court, you talk differently than if you work at a restaurant.
Yeah.
If you work at a restaurant, you talk about skillets and ladles and things like that, where people at a court don't talk about those things.
Yeah. Different industry jargon. And
so at a court, someone says nulli pros, or they say capias, they mean certain legal things. Somebody at a kitchen don't mention those things.
yeah.
And that's how you can tell what industry someone might be in.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense.
And it can help you tell the difference between authors. Some authors use some language a lot more than others.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So I remember Darwin used to love using the word singular. He used it regularly.
Really?
And I had an English professor ask me how I knew these things. I said the Google Ngram project, where you can look up the words that gets historic use over time.
That's pretty cool. So Shakespeare probably has, if you went through all of his stuff, you'd see certain patterns.
Shakespeare's known for coining a lot of phrases that people use or used after him. Yeah.
And are n-grams still used when Google tries to figure out the topic of the page?
N-grams can be used that way, yeah. N-grams are often used to understand things like language models.
No.
Got the screen call feature on my phone. Call ended. I know it wasn't good. Hello, this is Bill's phone. Can you please say why you're calling? I'm going to record it and tell him. If he wants to talk to you, he'll talk to you. It says call ended. It's not a good sign.
I get a lot of phone calls where people just hang up now for some reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's machines or what it is, but it's spam, I guess.
So I like the call feature, the screen call feature.
Yeah, it's like the one that Google Voice has, right? Where if you call and it says this person.
Sometimes people, like people selling car warranties, will say something and I can hang up on them. Your car warranty has expired. Say, yeah, the car's 20 years old. You don't care. I don't care either. Goodbye.
I get that about new cars though too. Like they call you no matter what. Like they don't care.
So some people have actually put that phone call on TV. Was it Car Shield?
Oh, I don't know. Probably
Yeah.
a lot of them.
So I'm going to spend a lot of money on fixing my car. So I'm not going to talk to the guy on the phone who's calling me about Car Shield.
No.
Huh.
No, yeah. There's.
And we're at the top of the hour, so unfortunately we're going to have to call it a day. But thank you all. Take care. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye,
See ya.
everybody.